Hi, I'm Bruce Vanderschel. I've been working here at the Coralville West Music Store for 35 years in the repair shop. There's a lot of us here in the repair shop. We have a guy doing saxophones and another guy doing clarinets. I do string instruments and my forte is guitars. I do cellos and violin work from time to time to help out the other guys. We have two guys that do that and they get real busy sometimes. But most of my focus is on guitar and fretted instruments like banjos and mandolins as well. And like I said, I've been here 35 years, so I've seen a lot of instruments come over the bench. I do a lot of things like resetting the neck on guitars. I've got a Gibson ES 125 I'm doing right now, as well as a Martin, one of their sustainable wood OM models. So that's a pretty common repair, along with refretting, and I'd say most of the work that we do is setup work. And the reason it's so prevalent is that guitars, to maintain proper action all year round, the instrument goes through changes due to temperature and humidity. So as a technician, we need to change the instrument to reflect those changes that the instrument undergoes through contraction when it gets dry and swelling when it gets humid. And that results in changes to the adjustments, so they need to be readjusted so that it stays in proper playing condition. By far the hardest season on an instrument is winter time. In the summertime it does get pretty humid around here, it gets pretty hot. But usually your instrument is kept in air conditioning, and that's enough. If you're comfortable, your guitar is comfortable. But in the wintertime, especially for people that get dry skin, you're well aware that it's pretty hard on you, so it's pretty hard on your guitar. And when you turn your furnace on in late fall, it becomes a low temperature kiln to the wood in your home. And if you have wooden furniture like chairs and tables and stuff, you may notice changes in those as well. But it's really hard on your guitar. Guitar, especially acoustic guitars, are cut really thin and they're under a lot of tension. So when they dry out, because with your furnace running, it drives the moisture out of your home. It has to do with relative humidity, with the environment being warmer, the outside being cooler. It drives the humidity out, and your guitar will dry. And acoustic guitars especially will shrink. There are telltale signs of this. If you run your finger along the neck and you can feel ever so slightly sharp edges of the frets, it's because the frets were dressed off flush with the wood, but now if the wood is contracted, when they stick out, they're very sharp and very uncomfortable. You can try to prevent that. Some of it may be not preventable, and you would have to have the frets dressed off and reshaped. But if you can prevent it, it'll be a lot better for your guitar. And also the top will shrink, taking the strings along with it, and that top will fall because it's still attached to the side, and it has sides, and it has a very slight dome to it. So when it shrinks, that top falls, and then your action goes down, and the guitar begins to buzz and fret out, and the action just becomes way too low. So to help prevent it, I'm going to show you something to do. One thing you should do, and it's worth its weight in gold, is buy what's called a Dampit. And for most acoustic guitars, the Dampit Guitar Super is the model to get. It's green, it's got a sponge inside it, it's perforated surgical tubing, that's what it looks like to me anyway. It comes with a plastic sound hole cover. Whenever you're not playing the guitar, keep it in its case, put the Dampit in it. You want the Dampit as moist as it can be without dripping, and use that religiously throughout the winter because that will help keep the box humidified. but you're going to need something to help with the neck. And this is where this comes in. I bought this morning at Walgreens. This was $1.99, so $2.11 with tax. And a sponge, and a pack of sponges. They come in a 4-pack, and they're like $3.98. So if you have multiple guitars for $12 or a little bit more than $12, you can build 4 of these little units that are going to help with the neck of the guitar. And this is a little brad point bit, a 1/16 inch size, but a twist drill will work. And what you want to do is just, you don't need the bottom for this operation. You're going to want to cut the sponge with the scissors so that it fits in the soap dish. And you want to take the drill bit and just drill some holes in the top of this to allow moisture to get in and out. Then you'll get this wet just with tap water, put it in the soap dish and close it all up. And if you can keep your instrument humidified throughout the winter until your furnace is able to be turned off in spring, your instrument will have a lot easier life. Worst case scenario will be that your instruments get so dry that they crack, and crack repair is pretty devastating. We have to rehumidify it to draw the crack back together and then fix the crack. It's really time consuming and it's really expensive. So if you can prevent that from happening, you'll be money ahead and your guitar will be a better guitar. So the upshot of this whole thing is try to humidify. Guitars are going to want to be around 45% humidity year round. So in the wintertime that can be really tough to keep it there. And a lot of people say, well, I have a humidifier on the furnace, but those don't really put enough moisture back in the air. For one, they only run when your furnace is running. So when your furnace is not running, even though your home is still warmer than the outside air and the humidity is still being driven out of your home, it's not adding any moisture back in. So, and most of the time, if you keep your home at 45% humidity, you know, your windows are going to be dripping with condensation. So a lot of times it's not practical to keep the humidity level quite that high in your house, but you're still going to want to keep it that high in the guitar. That's why putting the dampit in the box of the guitar and making a little soap dish humidifier for the neck is going to be really beneficial to you. Along with that, your instrument may still change. If you did everything perfectly, it may change on you anyway a certain percent. So you would still need to have the neck readjusted, and probably you would need the action raised up just a little bit because it's going to fall, and it'll need to be maintained at the proper height. A lot of people on an acoustic guitar, excuse me for the chair squeak, an acoustic guitar will have, this is called the saddle, I don't know if you can see it, but the saddle piece that sits on the bridge, this is the bridge, that saddle piece will need to be raised up. And if it doesn't need to go very far, sometimes it's okay to shim it. I'm not a big fan of that. A better repair is to make a new saddle that is slightly taller. As you own the guitar, you may find that you'll have built up a little stock of saddles, and you may have 3 or 4 of these. You'll have a low one, which will typically be put in the summertime when it's really hot and humid. The instrument swells up from the heat and the humidity, and then the action goes up, becomes too high, so it would need a shorter saddle in it. You may have a very sensitive instrument that needs another saddle that's kind of an in-between height that you'd use in the fall and the spring. And then finally in the wintertime when it's really dry, you'll have a saddle that's fairly tall, and that is to maintain the action at the proper height when everything has contracted.
Hi, I am Tom Bielefeldt. I'm the local luthier at West Music, Marion. I am the guitar violin repair person for those of you who are unsure what luthier means. We are here today to continue speaking about the effects of winter and cold weather on wooden instruments, stringed instruments in particular. First of all, I'm going to start off with probably one of the bigger points is the cold itself and how it affects guitars, violins. Typically instruments that are made of wood are made, like guitars, are made with very thin tops. To be able to produce the sound loud and full, those thin tops are also very weak and are covered with a finish or lacquer or polyurethane. So there's a thin piece of wood covered with kind of a somewhat fragile finish, and that's where the effects of cold come in. It's real popular for people this time of year to store, not necessarily store, but keep or transport their instrument in their car. And sometimes that involves storing it there for a few hours where it can get extremely cold in a short time. And when you bring that instrument in, what you really need to do is leave it in the case, keep it in the room where you're going to be opening up the case in, but allow that instrument and case to become room temperature to the touch. You want to be very careful that it's not cold yet. When you open a case, it sucks in the room's warm air, hitting that cold instrument, and the sudden change makes the wood and the finish go ballistic, basically, trying to expand and contract and push and pull. And this instrument with a thin top is already under extreme tensions just from having strings on it. So it becomes very vulnerable to a lot of problems like broken braces, cracks. The finish can literally check and crack right in front of you sometimes when it's hit too quickly with that warm air. This is a big problem. Obviously something we want to guard against, and it is something that you can do. You can prevent this problem from happening by just planning ahead a little bit. Maybe before you take your instrument out to the car, warm up the car a little bit, let it run 12 minutes out in the parking lot or driveway or whatever. Get it more warm than cold, transport the instrument relatively quickly to the vehicle, and then when you get to your destination, take the instrument out of the warm vehicle right into the warm room, preventing that long section of cold. Sometimes you have to store it temporarily in the cold. That's where you need to bring it into the room, let it acclimate very slowly, and even after it's acclimated to room temperature to the touch, I recommend opening that case very slowly, maybe even open it a 1/4 inch, push a pencil in, let it sit that way for 10-15 minutes to let that warm air go in real slow instead of a big burst. And that's real important about the temperature changes. Just it's common sense. When you have something that is like a puppy, likes to be warm, you take it out in the cold, freezing air, it doesn't like that. You treat your guitar with a similar respect, I guess. Violins, cellos, everything like that. A lot of instruments these days come with the bag vinyl cases. They offer less protection to this, so they are even more likely to have problems like the cold attacking them. So just keep that in mind as well. This is also very true for electronic issues, for like guitar players who have effects pedals, amplifiers. The metal and the circuitry and everything else will get cold as well. When you bring it into the club or into your practice room or to your lesson, that hot air hits it, and there, instead of the wood and finish cracking, most of the metal and the circuitry will condensate, forming small bubbles of water right on it. And if you plug it in the wall, turn it on, those bubbles of water are likely to short something out or even potentially shock the user. So there too, let that acclimate very slowly, let that condensation evaporate. So just something to keep in mind there as well. So anyway, that's point number one that I'm making today. Point number two, I think Bruce has already spoken about the dry effects of winter. This is in relation to that. Dry air, dry rooms can cause, as you well know, if you walk across your carpet, touch your TV, you almost always get that little shock, that static electricity. That can also become very relevant to instruments. Most instruments will have a polyurethane finish or a nitrocellulose finish or a plastic pickguard, all of which conduct that style of electricity. So when you sit down and play, you might be strumming along and suddenly, pow, you get a little shock off from your pickguard. If it's an electric guitar, oftentimes that is picked up, ran through the amp or PA or whatever, and can potentially be a little bit of a problem there. When that dissipation occurs, it's kind of a sudden burst of audio to the system. Or if you're recording, you obviously don't want that in there. So a couple things you can do to try to prevent that. is first of all try to keep your room or your environment humidified, as Bruce has spoken about. But you can also use a type of what I want to say, the static cling stuff that you use for your dryer, in your dryer on your clothes. You know, spray a little bit, not necessarily on your guitar, but maybe just a tad on a rag and just wipe it on your pick guard. Oftentimes if you just spray it on your shoes so your feet do not conduct that electricity through the carpet, that will help. And then I think I was going to say one more thing here. Oh, that also, you know, that static discharge is a discharge of electricity, so it can also be directly hard on like acoustic electric guitars that have active components in them. You can actually ruin your electronics right in your guitar when that pops. Not real often does that happen, but it's just one more thing you can guard against. Lastly, the last thing I want to speak about is how you store your instrument. This pertains to all year round as well as in the winter, but oftentimes you like to put your guitar on a stand, or maybe you have a favorite hanger on a wall where it's, you know, pretty for one, it's sitting out, everyone can see it, but it's also very easy to get at. You don't have to mess with the case every time. I recommend only use those for very, very short periods of time. You know, stands are nice that way. You can set it in the stand, get up, go run a quick errand, come back, or whatever, grab your pencil, come back, grab your guitar, and go. But otherwise, cases are the best place for an instrument. I heard somebody tell me that it's not a question when it's going to fall, or if your instrument's going to fall. It is more like when will it fall, because it is bound to fall. By keeping it in the case, that is, you know, the best protection of all, but also to the elements. By hanging your instrument on a wall, especially an outside wall, definitely avoid that. You don't want to have a hanger on an outside wall. The cold air transfers through the wall, making that surface of the wall very cold, and when the guitar is hanging there, the furnace's room's air is hitting the front side, the cold is hitting the back side, and this box is fighting itself drastically. One side wants to contract, one side wants to expand, and again, it's under a great tension. And in the winter months, most homes are not moist enough with humidity, so it's already under that tension. So that is certainly something we want to try to prevent as well. Ideally, keeping it in the case, a controlled case, humidity and temperature is best. And with those facts in mind, for the most part, that's going to take care of you for the winter months. There are obviously other small things we can look into, but you know, as far as the cold, just kind of keep it common sense. You know, again, treat it like a puppy. Don't forget about it. Don't leave it in the car too long. Play with it, water it, and you know, a couple other things. As long as we're doing this real quick, I like to mention to every guitar player that comes through that doesn't know, you know, wash your hands before playing. Wiping down the instrument after playing is very important. One dirtier rag for the strings to remove the acids and oils, keeping them fresher longer. A cleaner rag for the body. Just a light wipe to get the fingerprints off is all that's usually necessary there. And then put it in the case and you're done. So anyway, once again, I am Tom Bielefeldt at the Marion West Music. I'm the local luthier here. Keep me in mind, most guitars, violins, cellos, any stringed instrument under pressure goes through physical changes typically twice a year, about a month after the seasonal change. Oftentimes those will need my attention, if not for repairs, but almost always for some sort of setup or adjustment. So just pay attention to your instrument, enjoy it. When you notice something small changing, bring it to me. I'm more than happy to take a look at it and let you know what I think. Thank you.